Howdy mates, good afternoon. How are we all doing? It is Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. As you can see, you can probably tell that there's quite of a change of scenery. Well, guess what? For this week, from the 22nd to the 29th, I'm actually visiting my home state of Ohio. I'm actually right now, I am in my hometown as we speak. So, today is so far, it's my first day returning. You could say, right now I'm just taking some walks down my memory lane, as this is, of course, my hometown that I've grown up in most of my life. So, I wanted to create this opportunity, which I'll probably have to break up into 2 or 3 separate videos. I figured this was a great opportunity to refresh myself on some of my hometown's history, which has actually a very high significance, by the way. So, Greenville, Ohio, right? Also known as the Treaty City. You know, that took place back in 1795. Well, before I get into that aspect of it, Greenville was established basically in the 1780s, going into the 1790s. And actually, it was this very town. It was once a fort. Fort Greenville was for the longest time the headquarters for the Continental U.S. Army during the Revolutionary War, which basically lasted from 1775 to 1783. And to basically refresh you guys on some history even more, the Revolutionary War was between 3 different parties. You had the colonists, who were part of the Continental Army, the Native Americans, with numerous tribes throughout this nation, and of course you also had your British in addition too. So, quite humbling. Like, you figure back then, the times were a lot more hostile, because, you know, just looking around you with these buildings and whatnot, it wasn't always like this, you know, or roads. You had to be even way more on the lookout for other enemies. Because basically where I'm standing right now, this was once Native American territory. So, basically where I'm at, as it's showing here, I'm near the Greenville City Park. This is the Peace Council House, which I will cover in a second. So, before I go further in depth of Greenville's history, I want to talk a bit about what happened beforehand. So, okay, good news. It has reached 1783, and basically the conflict between the colonists and the British ended temporarily. And that was known as the name just, gosh dang it. Well, in 1783, a peace treaty was signed between them, and basically it temporarily ended the conflict. But that only lasted so long, because, you know, back then the colonists were still rather what you call land hungry. They wanted to still expand their territory. And basically back then, Ohio and Indiana were highly sought after. So we fast forward about 8 or so years, And basically, George Washington, who actually became president around that time, he was, of course, the first president and was the commander of the Continental Army. He appointed both Josiah Harmar and Arthur St. Clair to basically lead the militia that was traversing through this very territory. So there was a point where they started traversing from Fort Washington, which is now known as Cincinnati, and they made their way up to what is now known as Fort Recovery. So 1791, a conflict called the Battle of the Wabash occurred. So named because not too far from here is the Wabash River. So it was in Fort Recovery where Arthur St. Clair led his army of up to 1,000 people or more. And it was actually known to be one of the most embarrassing defeats to the Continental Army. 3 times more casualties, or triple the casualties of what happened at the Battle of Little Bighorn, with General Custer. So you could say it was one of the worst defeats that the that the Continental Army ever experienced. Sorry, I'm like stumbling upon my words. So, due to that humiliating defeat, George Washington wanted to appoint a new commander. He became known as General Mad Anthony Wayne, in which we have several towns named after him. Fort Wayne, Indiana, Waynesboro, Georgia, and among other towns throughout the country. And General Mad Anthony Wayne, he had a way about him in which he was not really intimidated by indigenous people and even the British. He had a certain way about him that basically gave him his nickname, Mad Anthony Wayne. He had a force. He was fierce. And that was the very type of person that George Washington desired. And it was also very desirable if the Continental Army wanted to progress in the war. So it was around that same time that basically Fort Greenville was established. And it was essentially the headquarters for the U.S. Army, or the Continental Army, I should say. So fast forward another 3 years, so now it is August 1794, the Battle of Fallen Timbers occurred. And basically, that was an actual victory for the Continental Army, which was led by Mad Anthony Wayne. And basically, they were fighting against all sorts of tribes, whether it be the Shawnee, the Miami, the Wyandots, or even the Lenape. They all fought during that time, and they were also even allied with the British during the time. So that was actually a victory for a change. And so it took a year later, August 1795, in which was proposed to be the Treaty of Greenville. So that is how this town is known as Treaty City. Because basically, 13 different indigenous tribes met up with General Mad Anthony Wayne and even William Henry Harrison, who was soon going to be a president. I believe he was the 9th president, but please correct me if I'm wrong. And even, as I believe, Lewis and Clark, the well-known explorers during their time, were here as well. But I'll be sure to put in an edit if I am wrong. But the Peace Council House, which was basically where Anthony Wayne would usually meet up on the top, it actually lists the 13 different groups: the Chippewa, Delaware, Eel River, Kaskaskia, Kickapoo, the Miami, Ottawa, Piankashaw, Potawatomi, Shawnee, Waya, and the Wyandot. So basically, it was these 13 tribes that were present during this. And of course, the well-known tribal chiefs that were there included the Blue Jacket of the Shawnee and even Little Turtle of the Miami. But the thing is, what the treaty essentially did was it basically created a treaty line that stretched from basically Greenville westward towards Fort Wayne and then eastward towards Cleveland. So basically, it temporarily ended the conflict between the native tribes that inhabited the Northwest Territories. Of course, like I said, it was temporary. It didn't last very long. It was very, what you call, uneasy peace. And of course, one of the individuals who really did not agree with this treaty was, of course, Tecumseh, which I will actually have to save him for a separate video. So basically what the treaty did was any land that was to the south of the whole treaty line, it could be inhabited by the new settlers, whereas land further to the north, the settlers could not touch. The indigenous tribes could still live there. So that's why I said it was rather what you call an uneasy peace that didn't last very long. So stay tuned for my next video as I go a bit further into what eventually happened and essentially to what led to today's history. So thank you guys for watching. Forgive me for the length. This actually turned out to be a lot longer than I thought it would. So it's worth the time though. It's about 13 minutes and you guys really get a decent history lesson. Not just for Ohio, but this also really applies nationally too. So thank you guys for watching. Take care, and Durnye on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.